Waiting in the wings, I have a guy he calls himself a human connection specialist. I think he is one of the most profound new thought leaders of our time. I mean, if the Oprah show were still on, he'd be a regular guest. He founded Create the Love. He also founded a whole new app, the world's first emotional network called Mind, which he invited me to work on with him. So I'm without further ado, why wait? I'm going to bring him on because we really want to find out what his beautiful no is.
Hola, bonsoir. Hi.
Hi, Mark Groves.
Hello. It's so good to see you.
Hello, my friend. It's so good to see you. Okay, so you know I love you so much. We've become near and dear to one another. And there's nothing I think you can't do. It's just an amazing to me how the universe put you right there in my path. And I know, isn't it crazy?
I love it. It makes you realize, like, when people tell you to trust life and you don't trust it yet.
That's right.
That you start to believe it when you follow the dots, you know, you're like, oh,
For
the
sure.
breadcrumbs, yeah.
And at the time when we met, I'm not so sure I was the one who was looking to meet any new people. You know, I've been a little shut down. When I was working on that Oprah show, everybody was asking me for everything. So I got a little shut down, like, whoa, you know, and the only people who get to come in are people who I've known forever. And that began to shift for me. And I'm so glad it did, because it's a life-changing thing to make profound, deep relationships so quickly, you know, later in life. And who would have thought?
I know. I appreciate the guidance of whatever brought our two souls on this incarnation together. We're going to make the best of it. That's for sure.
I do too. I agree. Well, let's get right into the series title, which is, as you well know, I have come to believe that betrayal, heartbreak, rejection, disappointment, that when you mine the depths as quickly as possible, that's the key, you often can discover great beauty in what looked like a no, what was a no, what was a stop, what was a disappointment, what didn't go your way. And I called my memoir The Beautiful No, because one of the great beautiful no's about my life changed everything. You know, next thing you know, I was on a career path that, you know, turned out to be very, very, very magical. So Mark Groves, what's your beautiful no?
Yeah, you know, I was thinking about this a lot. You know, I wish I want to think of, I've had many explicit no's. I used to be in sales, so you get really used to no.
Right.
And you always, you know, in sales, they have a saying that a no is just closer to yes. And my no was more internal rather than be explicit and received by someone to me. It was that I got to a place where I just couldn't go any further in my life down the path I was building. I was at this Y in the road where I had asked a really wonderful woman to marry me, and I had asked, and then immediately after it was essentially my awakening. You know, who's to think, you know, to think that that was a form of rock bottom, but it was really this place where I was either going to have to fully self-abandon and go down this path that I was taught to want, or actually sit with and acknowledge what was being, oh my gosh, was being funneled through my body and my heart. But I was just so afraid to hear that no and accept it, because it meant potential rejection and exile by society, that when your relationship ends,
well, let's
something's
just
wrong
say
with
this right there, my friend. Scandal.
Right,
Scandal.
right.
It's a scandal. You asked her, she said yes. Now you just march your ass down the aisle and just get over it.
Right. And you're just afraid of commitment. You're just a guy. That's what you do. And I'm like, oh man, it was just so much more than that. And when people would say that to me, it would crush me, because I was under the weight of so many expectations and society's path that I just remember when someone would dismiss it so simply, I would get so sad because I felt so unseen.
Oh, I know, Mark. And I can picture you that even when you were a little bit of a rouser, you still were a good boy. You
True.
were a good boy who wanted to do the right thing. So I can, knowing you as I know you and admire you, your moral compass, you just have such a sturdy internal system that would be that no coming up from inside you would be horrible.
It's like an ultimate crossroads, because you really think about yourself being, I either have to stay connected to my soul, stay connected to my mission, actually give birth to my mission through the no, or abandon and experience what is a false sense of belonging, because it's only under the condition that I adhere to the rules of the game.
I know. So on the other side, so at the time, just like in my case, when I'm devastated and eating chips and not washing my hair for a week, you're sitting there with this internal no that is filled you with some conflict, and obviously you didn't go through with things.
No, I did not.
And so why would you say, so I have two questions to ask you. Because so first of all, what makes that no beautiful now when you look at it?
I think those moments of betrayal, rock bottom, loss, all those things are, I think we either get kicked off the train of life or we choose to get off it. But either way, the rock bottom is what derails us, so to speak. And that was a beautiful no, because it was the first time that I ever even thought about my own story. It's interesting I remember one of the first thoughts I had once I ended the relationship, and what was so difficult is she was such an incredible woman. So it was like everything I was taught to want, but yet I didn't want it. And I remember thinking to myself not long after, like, how did I get here? Like, when did I lose me? And yeah. I remember thinking it was probably like 8 or 9 years before that. And it was just such to be able to, it's a beautiful no, because it is what finally made me pay attention to the voice inside.
Yes. Well, no. Okay. I'm so glad I was going to have to say it for you. Because everything you're doing in the world, your teaching, your courses, your founding this, it's all about, connection with self, connection with other people is only possible because of that beautiful now.
Yeah.
Because without that internal absolute disruption saying, nope, you're not doing this, you're not going down this path, like many people, and I think that's what we're trying to shake people awake. You start marching down a road that really isn't yours, doing things you really don't want to do because, well, like everybody else is going that way, or because that's what I'm supposed to do, or like it's culturally mandated or externally driven, and you're just kind of like a wisp on the wind, and totally. Life is just blowing you hither and yon, right?
Yeah, it feels like that. I remember thinking, like, of course I chose my life up until then, but it was so unconscious. It was like the first time I ever really thought about what do I want. And I remember reading Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Yes. And I remember him talking about like your purpose, your why. And I'd never even thought about that. I thought like I was supposed to get a job, make enough money to take care of a family, be a good provider, buy a house, right. Get a fence, and not really, and not actually asking if I wanted that. And I think you're exactly right, which is we are mostly, till we're not, sort of sleepwalking through life and calling it life, but we're working for other people's purposes and dreams, or we're just a cog in a wheel to keep the system alive, which makes us buy things we don't want, and it just keeps the momentum of the system. And I think a lot about my work has felt that it is derive from, and I think this is true of your work, this is true of people who are stepping into whatever their purpose is, and whatever that means for an individual, because it's so subjective, is that we are inviting a place of unconditional love that says, like, actually what makes you special is actually not a reason to exile you, but rather a reason to invite you into community. And when I was so afraid of being exiled for my no, I ended up figuring out what community really is. What does coming home really feel like? What does unconditional love really mean? And how do we embody it, which is, I think, an ongoing sort of learning practice.
Yes. And, going that other path, which I think, for everybody who's watching, and oh my gosh, people are going crazy. I love you, Mark. There is the thing to examine, and maybe this will be posted in 2021, but for everybody who's live with us right now, there's a few days left in this holy season, this holy year. We're going to look back and see how holy and sacred it was. But check yourself for that little bit of underlining dread, that rut, that dread, that sameness, that dis-ease, that where you are not living the life of your dreams on some level. You just know you aren't. And first of all, saying I know I'm not, and that's okay, instead of being harsh and judgmental with yourself, and just start to open up the possibility of what could be on the other side of that for me.
Yeah, what a great moment of inquiry. Because, I think about that. You could be just mildly unsatisfied, and that's okay, because that's the gateway. That's and that's true relationally. That's true from a purpose in life. Like, if I didn't have to do the work I'm doing, what work would I choose? That right away invites a path away from the sort of momentum of culture and society. And it's an act of rebellion to choose oneself.
Apparently.
Right.
I think it is. Apparently it is. It's like that okay, I'm not going to remember the author, which is going to make me such a ninny, but Quiet Lives of Desperation. That's what, if most people, many people, a lot of people are just feeling quietly desperate, I think what we want to do right now is say, come out, come out, come out. And just start to that little bit of, I love that word inquiry, because it's gentle. It's just a little bit of let me take a look. Is it possible? And I think on the heels of the year that never was, 2020, the year that never was, the very strange year, the oddest year, the year that I suspect we're going to look back and see how powerful it was in our lives. This is the moment to say, what is my capacity for hope? What is my capacity for hope? We can get very, very cynical and very, very disappointed in all the no's that are coming left and right and here and there and everywhere, right? We can get very cynical. Do I have the capacity for hope that I want to have, that I want to move through the world with?
Yeah, I think about that capacity for hope being, especially to hold it in a time when hope seems to be rare, that the connection of what is painful or uncertain, which, let's be honest, that's all explicitly in front of us today. But to actually hold hope, hope's really the only thing that gets you through that. That's the guiding light. And I think about 2020 as being this collective initiatory process that, like, as a collective, we're experiencing a rock bottom of sorts. Of many, we might say we're in a dumpster fire and it just keeps getting fed. And, I imagine, like, how cool would it be just by choice to say, that was the year that everything changed for me. That was actually the year when everyone else complained, which I get it, there's a lot to be upset about. I actually used that energy to create and to give birth. And that's a really awesome
Well, see,
opportunity.
I know you're like me. You know, the minute it all started to like my calendar started to blow up, and all of a sudden, you know, the you know, I'm confronted with my lack of understanding and real knowledge of citizenship and social justice.
Mm.
You know, like from one thing to the next, just and at home and knowing other people are having so many struggles, and looking at my empty calendar and looking at my life and saying, what the hell is going on? What is going on? And yet somewhere in all of that, and I know that you're like me this way, I got a grip on myself very quickly. And I said, this is, it's just, and it really is my belief in the beautiful no. It's like, there are so many gifts coming your way, no matter how awful this looks. There are so many opportunities, so many gifts, so many profound transformations that you can be a part of if you're only willing to see the opportunity here, even when everywhere you turn, it just looks like a world gone mad.
I remember you said to me not too long after we first met, where I asked you about the wisdom that you've been exposed to throughout your life. And I remember you said to me that really, like, everyone's work is to remind you that you don't need their work. Like, everyone's message is to remind you that you don't need them.
Yes.
And I thought, what a humble thing of a teacher to say, like, I'm just supposed to remind you that you are Yoda. I'm just supposed to remind you that you are God. And I heard a quote the other day that said, God was hidden within everyone because that was the last place they would look.
Right.
And I thought, what a cool invitation, which I think this year has been that, which, it's Abraham Hicks talks a lot about, when you make a request for something, which I think as a collective, we've made a request for things, you are given all the experiences you need to collect the skills you're going to need along the way, and what you need to let go of and what you need to break free of, which is not to dismiss, everyone's experience being so different, but to say, whatever we're collecting along the way, and I'm sure we've all collected a lot this year, maybe some of the most than any year, it's all serving us if we're willing to see it that way. Again, not to dismiss the suffering. Right.
Not to dismiss the suffering at all. And, and we all suffer. I mean, that is the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots and lots of suffering. I mean, so much loss. I've never seen so much loss. Loss, there's been loss in my life, loss in people that I love and care about, people in my community, people in my country, my work. I mean, it really is quite astounding. And yet, you're talking about Viktor Frankl, for God's sakes, who found meaning in a concentration camp.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like that idea that if you're willing to take hold of yourself and keep expanding your capacity for hope, and see the seedling cracking through the concrete, that it's like you hang on to the life force, you hang on to something there.
Yeah, you do. And there's I think when we experience such immense suffering, which I think collectively and obviously individually, what it showed me, which was really fascinating, before 2020 started. I'd say it's been an ongoing process, which is that I thought I was paying attention. I would have said that I was very conscious of my choices, my thoughts, my feelings. But what I've realized is I really wasn't. I wasn't paying attention to all the grief and the suffering because I wasn't paying attention to my own. And,
right.
I sort of see now that you can't be awake and not be suffering, because there is suffering always going on around us. And right. I think of, what are we going to do with that? And I think, we're all suffering from no's. Like, you can't go out. You don't have some personal right. freedoms. You don't, maybe you've lost your job. Maybe and I think it's always in hindsight that we look back at these things and we say, that was the moment.
Best thing.
Right.
Yeah. Best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, there's no question that what 2020 did, it took away my foolery. I had fooled myself that I was now in the being state and not the doing state. And I thought I had that quite mastered. And then I noticed in the shelter in place COVID empty calendar, I'm still reporting for duty at my kitchen table with my laptop, tippy tapping the keys to I don't know what. And still like I'm like, what is this hum? What is this hum I'm feeling? This is me trying to create the energy of busyness, that energy, false busyness that I declared to myself I no longer wanted to rule my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it really took the world shutting down for me to say, oh, you haven't cleaned all that up yet.
Mm.
You know, like where when you're creating from joy, and it is okay to do something like out of the ordinary at 10:15. You know, like there's a little piece of me that at 10:15 you need to be at your desk, tippy tapping the keys. And then at lunchtime, maybe you can go take a break. Like all that false structure that I was like, Sherry, none of that's applicable. You know, and why can't you go put your toe in the grass at 10:15? Why can't you do that?
Right.
You know, that's something to look at, like why the universe, you know, we're going to all find out in our individual ways what the gifts were for us, but why the universe had literally had to shut down your calendar and wipe it out, and your travel, wipe it out, and all of that to get you to be still.
Mm. I mean, you're speaking to a busybody, recovering busybody too. So, I would say that my survival strategy was to be busy, to be productive, to always be with people. And it has been a journey. I see my partner just joined, and she is all about stillness. She's all about slowness. She's all about presence. And I was like, she's introverted, this introversion thing. I remember we'd like stay in on a Friday or Saturday. And I remember being like, there's something to this introversion thing. There's something to this stillness. And I realized that in the silence, I was really avoiding it because I was there. I remember going to this spiritual retreat and the woman saying, what are you most afraid of? And I said, silence, slowness. And she said, what are you afraid you'll find? And I thought, I'm not afraid, but I know that I'll just find more of me. And it was just in that moment where I was like, I have no choice. Like there was like I almost needed to go collect younger versions of me in there. Parts that I was afraid to touch, grieving, anger, rage, all those things. And one of my favorite teachers, Francis Weller, I remember hearing him say not that long ago in one of his audio series, he said that the soul moves at a geometric speed, and it will force you to slow down to its rhythm. And there's something so interesting about time, that it moves so much more slowly when you're actually present. Like it feels like days go by very quickly when you're busy, when you're doing. But my gosh, when you actually take a moment to breathe, there's so much deliciousness in each moment. And suffering, that means suffering's part of it. That means that we have to pay attention to
feeling our pain.
Yeah.
Feeling our sorrow, feeling our aloneness, feeling our disappointment. And yes, and by the same token, finding a way for us not to fall down that rabbit hole where we lose even more time than we had to.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Where it becomes a
to.
productivity in a way that's moving towards building what you actually want and who you actually are.
Well, you just brought up something really amazing. I want to ask you this question, thought leader of our time. I want to ask you this question.
I don't know if my friends and school teachers would agree with this, but yes, I like it.
They certainly would. Do you think when you said like that, then you get still and you're with more of yourself? And there's no question over many years of my life, I would avoid that. Because it was like, well, why do I want to do that? I'd rather, be with other people or whatever. Do you think there is What is the healing mechanism? What is the story that we need to remind ourselves of in order to delight in those soothing waters of stillness with ourselves?
What is the story we need to remind ourselves to go into those
Right.
spaces?
You know, I suspect, as I hear you say that 99% of the people who say, I can't meditate, there's something like this going on that I certainly have experienced in my life. And you're talking about that in a similar way, like that what's going to happen when we're alone with ourselves? What's going to happen? Are we going to disappear? Are we going to feel so much disdain or unworthiness? It'll be unbearable. What's keeping us from that? Do you
Well,
think?
I think one, it's that we don't believe we have the capacity to hold everything that's in there, but the capacity is actually created by going in there. I always think of like life experiences and choices that we have never made yet require us to expand to meet. So
Yeah.
I can keep making familiar choices that require no more of me than I actually am already familiar with because I've already done it. But whenever I'm challenged to make a choice that's new or to go into the depths of a feeling I'm not actually comfortable with, I'm invited to crack the container of what I would consider myself. But I love that saying that you're only handed what you can handle. And I go in with that level of trust. Is like, do I not want to do this because I actually genuinely don't want to do this? Or do I not want to do this because it requires more of me? And that's the soul's path, is in there. And I think the other side of it is I was terrified, and this is true continuously of my expansion, is I'm afraid that I'm going to get everything I want. And then then there's responsibility that comes with that. Like, wow, I gotta like live everything I'm saying. I don't get to
Oh
just,
my God, I have to walk the talk. Oh yeah, I had to talk with myself about that too. I got a little lax in COVID on some of my esteemable practices. It's like, pull it together, sister. Pull it together.
Well, and I think gentleness with that side too,
Yes,
right? Is like allowing us that space of compassion, but also not allowing us ourselves to make that home, as you said, to go down the rabbit hole and stay there. It's like grab yourself and transform.
that's right. That's right. I totally agree with that. So what's coming up for you? So I told everybody that we have our new world's first emotional network, Mind,
Yes.
MINE''D, that you co-founded, and I'm working with you on that, which is a joy and a blessing a million times over. Everybody, go sign up for Mind.
Yeah, it's free,
Really
so
good.
go check it out. I mean, it's essentially putting into a digital practice. It's the first emotional network because our idea
Yeah,
was let's create a space that is doesn't, a social media platform that doesn't make you feel worse about yourself, but expanded about yourself, and where
that's
you're
right.
surrounded by other people who are desiring to grow and all those things. And it's free right now, so all you have to do is go to Do You Mind on Instagram, and remember it's MINED, or download Mind,
That's right.
MINED.com.
And it's for conversations like this. I mean,
Yeah,
you are one of the experts, and we have really, really, really great experts
we
that
do.
do fabulous series. So it's kind of a curated platform. So like great conversations like we're having right now, it's going on there all the time. And I think Rafa was on here, and
Yeah,
Kylie, of
Kai's on
course.
here. Yeah.
Some of my favorite experts. And then what else are you working on, my friend? What's going on for you coming up?
Oh my gosh, I have a New Year. Every New Year's, I do a 1 month course in January that's all about rediscovering it's called Rediscover Your Wholeness. And the whole idea is I would watch people go through this journey of doing a diet or a fitness plan in January, but they weren't actually getting to the reason why they have a dysfunctional relationship or a challenging relationship with food or their body or alcohol or whatever it
Yeah,
is. And so it was really about how do we get down to understanding what do I value, what do I want? So you think of that sort of rejoining with your soul. And so it's a 30-day journey of actually living the practices so that at the end of 30 days, you're like,
that's
hey,
fantastic.
this is who I am.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised you developed something so brilliant. That's absolutely fantastic. And where do they go to find it?
They could just go to my Instagram to create the love in my bio, and yeah, and join whenever. It's going to kick off
I know.
January
You
4th.
know what, Mark? You're a monster on Instagram. I don't think I don't know. Do I personally know anybody? Like, I mean, you've got a monster following. I mean, you have grown that thing. People have flocked to it. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it's
been
so great.
wild. I got to tell you, I never would have thought, like when I think of that beautiful no, which I'm sure is similar for
Yes.
you, it's like I never would have thought that my pain being transmuted into sharing my pain and what I thought about love and relationships would lead to a place. But I think what's interesting about that, and you know, I think of your book, The Beautiful No, too, and I know you're doing a challenge, is that it's it it becomes like this place where we're witnessed. You know, when someone shares what they suffer from or have suffered from or
That's right.
through, all of a sudden someone else goes, well, me too. And then what you think is the reason you should be in your own and siloed and away and lonely is actually the very reason you should be is the very reason that you're connected to other people, is that, you know, we all suffer, we all get no's, we all, you know, have redirections in life. And I
I
think when we meet in
know.
that space, we feel seen.
We
So
do. We just hold the light so everybody can hang on until they can kind of remember that it's going to be okay. You know, it just occurs to me because we were just talking about you have the big launch. I'm doing my first digital
yeah,
launch.
what's yours? Tell me about it.
Mine is a 5-day free webinar, Write Your New Story 2021. And you can go to sherrysalata.com and register for that. It's free. It's going to be great. But here's what I think is amazing coming from media myself, you know, having spent years and years and years and years and years in media, that this is how you use digital. This is how you
Right.
use the internet. This is how we use technology to kind of just bring us all in this web of healing and illumination and light, and have these conversations, share what we know, share what we've learned, shares what we've seen. And, you know, Mark, I often say, you know, that, you know, people thought I hatched from an egg out of college, and next thing you know, I'm running the biggest show in television. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from
Oh
the
my
truth. Oh,
gosh,
my
right.
friend from junior high, Paula, is on. She knows. Nothing could be further from the truth. I was a 7-Eleven store manager. I was a toy store manager.
I was a
Um,
pharmaceutical rep. I
I
used to
was a
work at Best Buy.
typist.
Yeah, I used to be a landscaper at a golf course. It's a
Bad
journey.
typist. No, I know, but I had dreams. I did have dreams, and I did want to make an impact, and I did want significance, and I did want to find the way when you kind of lock into yourself and you say, oh, this feels right. This feels like this offering, like it's not even of me. I'm downloading it.
Right,
I'm downloading it like I've cleared myself and now I'm a vessel,
right.
which when any of us are in that sweet spot, that's what we're all doing. We've cleared ourselves and we're downloading through our own lens, through our own life experience, some sacred stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And for anyone watching, I mean, if you get 5 webinars with Sherry Salata, you take them. Trust me.
You're so sweet.
It's true. I think when you tap into a mind like yours and a soul like yours who's witnessed, you know, that's why I always ask you so many questions, because I mean, you've been in the company and are of the company of being surrounded by the most brilliant thought leaders of our time. And so I think that's why when you're transmuting something, when you're vesseling something, I'm like, okay, take it in, because you've done the work to make it so it's unique to you, but it's also you are a clear vessel of
It's the path.
of communication. Yeah.
Isn't it the path? It's the path. It's
Yes.
like the only conversation I want to have. And you know, I just and it's really self-serving in that the more conversations like this that we have, the more we keep these conversations rolling in our everyday lives all the time, the more we just keep remembering. We keep remembering what we really want, what kind of lives we really want to live, what we're really meant to do with our time here. It's fleeting.
And the specialness of that, right? That you don't have to, like, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. And, you know, of course, I'll have a friend say to me, well, you have to change diapers sometimes and you don't want to do that. I'm like, yeah, obviously, but you're doing that for the better of the child.
You want to care for your kid.
Right,
yes.
Yeah. But I mean, in the context of, like, it's so interesting to me that because we participate in this story where we're like, okay, I'm going to get that job, I'm going to marry that person, I'm going to do the things, all the steps that are being laid out by every religion, every culture, every whatever, that we think we don't have another choice. And then when you finally get exiled from the group, or you say no, or someone says no to you, or whatever, you're standing on the sidelines and you're sad because you're missing out, but then you realize you're free. And you're like, shit, I could do anything I want now. And you're like, that's right. Yes, this is it. And
that's right.
I remember people saying,
and you know what? That is one of the gems from 2020. All your time is free time. You want some free time? Here's your free time. All your time is free time. And I remember that knowing came to me one day when I was speaking on a panel. I'm like, wait a minute. Someone said, what do you do with your free time? And I was like embarrassed because I had no free time. But what occurred to me in my answer, and it was always embarrassing because, like, I work too much, blah, blah, blah. I'm a mom to dogs, blah, blah, blah. But when I got that all my time is free time, and I'm like, I know somebody here is going to tell me that they're not free, and I'm going to tell you you're wrong. Because I've had no money and I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent. And I've had shitty jobs and I've had credit card payments that I couldn't make. And still, even when the chips were down as they could be, it was still free time.
Amen. That implies choice, you know, which is which is important. You know, I think, as I said earlier in my beautiful no, that I realized I chose my life, but I wasn't really driving. You know, momentum was driving me, society was driving me. And I remember when I first was someone said to me, what do you want to do with your life now after my beautiful no? And I was like, I want to teach relationships. And they said, well, just start. And I thought, well, I can't just start. I got to go do all these things. And I got to, and I remember him saying to me that everyone thinks about step 5. Or step 6, but they don't realize that like you got to start now. They think about way over here, but you're not here.
So right. Who knows? Oh, it's a delay tactic, though. I'm a big step 6 girl.
The best delay tactic.
Girl. Yes. I'll do it in a bit. Study, read 10 books, take all these notes. Oh yeah. It's a delay tactic.
Well, and you realize, I heard Seth Godin say this the other day, that if you feel like an imposter, if you have imposter syndrome, that's the sign that you're doing good things. That means you're in the right room because you're having to grow. That means that you're doing something new. And I thought, like, what great validation of a feeling we all experience, that you're always going to be an imposter in a new room. That's actually a good sign. You know, and
I know.
Yeah, you're right, though. Delay tactic.
I know. And the thing about what's really interesting, if you're willing to be vulnerable enough with other people and you feel like an imposter, I was just on this big Zoom with these really amazing women. And one woman, when she got her chance to speak, said, I feel like I don't belong here. I'm having imposter something to that effect. And she was so vulnerable and courageous. Then all the people who hadn't expressed are like me. No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And I thought, darn it, if that doesn't happen every time. I mean, doesn't that just happen every time? It's like every time when I have the courage to share my shame, all of a sudden someone meets me right there. And it's like, they're like, oh my God, I feel so much better that you said that. Then I'm like, well, then I feel better that you said that to me. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's something really beautiful about vulnerability. The act of vulnerability, being in the act, is the witnessing of someone else who hasn't desired to be witnessed or doesn't even know they need to be. And I really love that. I love what you're saying, because it's true. As soon as you say or share something, someone else is then like, hey, I've experienced that too.
Oh, that's so good. That is the healing. That is, well, and you, human connection specialist, that is the healing power of what you do. It's like really understanding when someone ghosts you, that's not really what happened. It's a, it's a beautiful no,
Right. It's the
and
best kind of
breakups,
no. Painful
beautiful
no.
no's. Like that there is so much, there's treasures, there's jewels in those experiences. And I love watching how you help people mine through that. And I hear from people all the time how your work has changed their lives forever.
You know that whenever I hear that, I'm just like, it feels like I need to be pinched, because you sort of think like, I never would have imagined at my beautiful no that one day it would be the foundational space where I finally stood on solid ground. I finally stood in my own voice, or at least the beginning of it. When you, everything, it was sort of felt like everything had fallen apart, and in such a good way. But at the time, you don't think that. At the time, you think your life's over and everything's screwed, and now you don't know what's going to happen. And I now realize that that is such a great sign, although it's so destabilizing. And again, I don't want to dismiss the grief that comes with those and the anger, but to
Yes.
say like, there's what you said earlier, like being able to hold our capacity for hope. There's something about just finding the like smallest speck of light
Yeah.
in there where you get to just touch finally who you are, just like this space within your heart where you're like, there I am. And I think one of the most beautiful things about rejections and betrayals, and I know that sounds weird, so just hear me out, everyone, is that you're in a space where you can finally start to establish boundaries and communicate, because people are like, leave them alone. They're going through some things. And I think like, what an opportunity to claim your life in that moment. That's why
Yeah.
whenever anyone says I'm going through a breakup or I'm like, I'm sorry to hear that. And this is the birth of everything.
I know. And that's why being able to come back to, like, I'm just looking at people talk to each other while we're talking here. First of all the comments, you guys are so smart. They're so beautiful. So much enthusiasm for this conversation, which really, boy, that makes me happy, because it's,
Me
again, the
too.
only thing I want to talk about. But it's like, there is this hand holding that we can do with one another, that when you have a safe place to go, like in your groups or courses, or on the Mind platform, or in curated, even, some Instagrams, when you're having conversations like this, if you just have a place to take your broken heart while you start to stitch it back together with people who say, been there, understand, totally feel it, and also you can see that they're thriving, and they're
Mm-hmm.
soaring, and they're transcending, and that transcendence is always possible, which I think is our message.
Yeah, I think of what your book, which I love, and everyone should buy a copy of it if you haven't read it yet, is what I love about the message is that it's so hard to, like, what we think is the worst last, moment of our lives, which is not to say it isn't in that moment,
Yeah.
is it's amazing to me when you look back and you go, gosh, that was the time when everything changed. And I don't know. It's interesting when you're actually in the moment to make that choice, like to say, okay, I'm gonna feel the suffering, I'm gonna feel the grief,
That's
I'm
right.
gonna feel the things, and I'm gonna use this energy to create my life, to give
Yeah.
birth to who I am. And you might not even know what that looks like, but I think just being able to just say, maybe I will, maybe,
Yeah, and in that moment, like, you got to feel the pain, because you sweep that away, and it just comes back up on you. But it's that one little thread, that beginning to say, I know there's a gift for this. I know something really good's coming. Even if but let me cry some more. But it's trying to collapse that time. this is the last thing that I'll bring up to you, and then I'll let you go. Again, somebody in this Zoom I did held this up, and I thought it was so powerful. Somebody had created this gift, which is, if you live to 86 years old, here are all the weeks of your life. Start ticking them off, so you can see that, and remind yourself that you really only have this day. You really only have today, because who knows if you're going to get tomorrow. But let's say you get as many as 80 weeks, enough weeks to 86. It's still a finite container.
Right.
It's still a finite. How many weeks do you want to lose to feeling bad?
I agree.
How many weeks do you want to lose to misery? And I think, I look back, and that's for everybody to answer for themselves, because I have no judgment about it, other than having looked back at my own life and spending, weeks in bed, spinning a story that only made me feel worse, and creating more upset and depression, and not clinical depression, but emotional depression, disappointment, all those negative lower emotions, and just going to town, and I can't get that time back. I can't get that time back. I can't get those 3 weeks and those 2 weeks and this, when I was, moping around. But I could have had a very genuine emotional processing for a limited period of time, and then said, all right, I'm going to pick myself up. I see the gifts. I don't know exactly what they are. I know they're here. I have them in my hands, and all will be revealed to me, and I'm going to step back out.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to is maybe one of the most important skills we can develop, which is, how do I stand in both the ending and the beginning? How do I, right? Like, how do I bridge the two?
Say that again.
How do I stand in both the ending and the beginning?
Yes.
That they are, because what you're saying is so important, which is, yes, it's normal and human to go down the grieving, the ending, but it's also, there's got to be a bridge between the two. And I really think that's where the cocoon is. That's the space between the caterpillar and the butterfly, which we're going to be caterpillars and butterflies many times. We're not just going to experience one cocoon, unfortunately.
That's right. That's right. Well, and it's also, it's stilling yourself enough to know when it's legit and when you are just playing that tune longer than you need to. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we all know when we, what's the word for it? Where we almost exploit our own misery, because it's, there's what feels like some benefits in that too, until it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, there's that familiarity to it. There's a familiarity to pain, and it reminds us of love. And if we had a longer conversation, I'd argue that it sometimes is love, that the experience of grief is actually the experience of what happens when you have an open heart. And I think this speaks again to what you were saying, though, about recognizing the number of weeks you have left till you're 86 is experiencing that you are dying right now. You're dying right now, which that's not to be negative, that's to be real, which is, I think, what 2020 has done to us is it has said you are dying and you might die. And we all go, well, that's always been true. We've just never had it so explicitly in front of our face. And I'd say that's a gift, because if you were dying and you were given a finite time, and we see this in oncology, when people are given a cancer diagnosis, they start to thrive, the survivorship. And it's because they have an idea of an ending, and there's a whole a can of worms as to whether people should even give that diagnosis. But I think when you recognize that you are actually in this moment closer to your mortality, then you say, okay, well, what do I want to do with the remainder, however many thousands of weeks or whatever? I mean, I was thinking this the other day, so it's interesting you say this, although not shocking, about how I'm 42, and I thought, oh, Christmas, I love Christmas. Now Christmas Day came and Christmas music's over and all the things. And I thought, if I live till, let's say I'm 80, 85, that's not very many Christmases left. And I thought, wow, I really got to get to it. Like people are like, I want 2020 to end. And I'm like, no, you want the pain of 2020 to end,
That's
but
right.
don't want the time to end.
I
Be
know.
present.
That's right. These days, these are your sands in the hourglass.
Right.
Even
Like
these ones, even the
you got
2020
to.
days,
Right.
they're your sands in the hourglass.
And this is a good time to hustle because other people are like, oh, I can't wait till this is over. And they're drinking
Right.
scotch and whatever they're drinking. And you're like, actually, I'm waking up early and I'm getting my thing done,
Yes.
So it's a
Well,
time.
here's what's interesting. So I'll get us to start to close on this rep, and let me just say, okay, when Mark Groves comes on, lots of people show up. This was huge. This
So
was
much
like a
fun.
rock concert. And thanks everybody. Thanks everybody for coming. And check everything out for Mark at his Instagram, Create the Love, and you'll find Do You Mind? You'll find the Mind app. You'll find Create the Love, and go to sherrysalata.com, and all my stuff's on there. But you said something today that I think is the perfect way for us to wrap this, which is I look at a transition from year to year as the month of December, the month of January. It isn't like a night. It doesn't happen at midnight because the world, it's like it's an energetic transition. So now what we're being called to do is stand at the ending while we're starting the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And how are we going to do that? That is the question we all must ask ourselves. How are we going to do that? How are we going to end this? We have several days yet. So listen, if you're late to the party on that, you still have days to end this year right in a way that feels worthy of your life. And then as we move into this new year, that's still full of unknowns and will have its challenges, but filled with possibility. How do we bridge this transition? Your final words on that, good sir?
Man, how do we bridge that transition? I think we have to, if there's one thing we have to get so comfortable with, it's being really comfortable with discomfort, with being in the uncertain. I said earlier that everything that requires more of you is going to be something you don't want to do, but it's going to require your expansion. And, I come back to those words that we get handed everything we can handle. And sometimes those aren't things that we want, just like beautiful no's are not things we'd write in our story, but they're part of our story. And I think there's a change when you take a moment that is a no and you learn from it and you make it a launching pad or a continued part of a deepening of your story, then you make it part of your story, but not part of your narrative. And that narrative part being, I'm not enough. Why does this stuff happen to me? All those things. But instead, it's like, how would you write it in? And I know, your course that's just launching, your new one, is about that. Do you want to tell people more about that? Because I want to hear more about it. I haven't heard all about it.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. It is really about the power of transformation. That's that's the big energy that I'm stirring the pot of. I think that even more than a verb or a noun or anything, that idea of transformation is almost an emotional, spiritual climate that you can create, because change is happening. So why not embrace it and align with it so it feels good and exciting and filled with possibility. And I also think the power of writing, the power of the written word, using your language, using your story and beginning to, see what story you've written and what story you're gonna write for 2021. So that's what I'm gonna do for 5 days in January, starting January 11th. And I'm just gonna go live. I'm gonna go live, talk about it, and really drill down. See if I can share some tools that have been really, really, really helpful to me. But I see it as because remember, there is no guru. So everything's a co-creative experience. So come to the buffet and see if there's something in there that feels good.
Yeah, and if you're on here and you don't normally follow Sherry, you're from my side of things, then make sure you do and sign up for her challenge, because I have been continuously mentored and guided by her words, her work, her heart. And I'm so blessed that she said yes to helping mentor and create Mind with me. And so, you know, as someone who has been a guide for me, I really encourage everyone to, you know, what she said is the humility that she works by, which is there is no guru. And I love that, because if the work is done from a place of we're all just going to witness each other together and you are the guru, I mean, that's the place. It reminds people of their power, and what an opportunity. And as I said earlier, if you can get 5 freaking live calls with Sherry Salai, you take them. That's what you do.
Yay! I can't wait. I think it's going to be so fun. Like I said, it's the only thing I want to talk about. I send you away with my heart, my friend. I love you so much. I love you so much. I think you're amazing. And my eager expectation is to continue to watch what you bring to the world and what your offering is and how your mission expands, because I adore you. Everybody, the end and the beginning, here we stand, and the bridge is going to be hope.
Beautiful. Much love, Sherry. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for showing up. Yay!